Here is our Wheel of Fortune drawing for listener questions. And congratulations, that is your winner.
Row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. Merrily, 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 life is but a dream.
And we're back!
You're Between Two Dumbbells. I'm your host, Skip Hill, and I'm bringing over 40 years of bodybuilding experience to the table, including over 24 years of online coaching. I'm joined today, as usual, by my co-host, Dr. Marv, aka the Educated Meathead. For each show, we posit a thought about a training exercise or training methodology, and then we deep dive into the minutia. We might argue and debate, or we might agree and tell each other how smart we both are. But at the end of the discussion, we both decide if we smash or pass the topic of the day. Be sure to use the TrueNutrition.com link in the closing credits to save 10% on not just Team Skip protein, but every supplement they sell. Not only do I use my Team Skip protein with my clients, but other top prep guys have their clients use my protein because it's that good. We want to hear your feedback and your questions in the comment section about the things you like about me and all the things you hate about Dr. Marv. We'll continue to choose good questions. I can almost not say it with a straight face. We'll continue to choose good questions from the comment section and use them for viewer questions, or we might even use a question as a topic on the show. I got to do something with that intro because I've used it twice and it cracks me up. And I know you're sitting there like, that's just mean.
I was waiting for it. I was like, I know it's coming.
Oh, my goodness. All right. You have the posit today, Dr. Marv. What do you think? What's on your brain?
All right. Ooh, man. Cue all the hate. Tell us how dumb we are because it'll boost us in the algorithm.
Exactly.
I posit that the bent over barbell row is definitely an old school movement that should definitely be left back in the golden era of bodybuilding compared to what we have today. I know.
You got a few people jumping at their phones right now.
Yep. So listen to the entire. Yep. Listen to the whole conversation. Right. And remember, this is everybody's an N of one. Everybody's gonna say, what about this person? What about this person? What about this person? It worked for them. It's great. But remember what I do for a living. I'm a performance chiropractor. When people hurt their backs lifting, it's honestly bent over rows number one, more than even a deadlift, right? So that might surprise folks. But when people have a hot low back and throw their back out, majority of the time, a bent over row is more than deads and squats combined of what is coming into my office.
And who does not, I don't want to say have a hot back, but if you spend any time in the gym moving weight at all, who has a lower back without a vulnerability? And even if you don't have that vulnerability and you're young, I always say, if you're young, you're made of rubber anyway. I'm in the gym watching things that are being done. And I sometimes I'm like, look away, because it's just cringy. Because I think what that would feel like if I were to do it and where they're headed if they don't get their shit straight. It's like, get away with it now. It's like dropping a baby or something. When, you know, they're made of rubber. It's a horrible thing to say. I've raised 4 kids, so clearly I don't want anybody dropping a baby. But they could fall off. My daughter fell. Our oldest daughter fell off. She was not strapped in to a carrier, and she was in that where she has not moved and has not made any type of movement to date to that age, and was able to somehow within 5 seconds fall out of the carrier onto a laundry room floor. Now, when I say laundry room, that's how broke we were when the kids were young. It fell onto a laundry room floor. That's the equivalent of me falling, I don't know, 25 feet. Run her to the ER, and the doctor laughs and says, you know, after they checked her, obviously, she's fine. They're made of rubber. But you and I and the rest of us, that's just not the case. We're not that pliable. Is that the word I'm looking for? We're just, no. I'd have a broken back. I'd have a broken spine, 2 broken legs. I'd look like Peter Griffin, you know, after he falls or while he's holding his knee going. Anyway, exactly, for 5 minutes, which only gets funnier. Let's be fair. It's funny originally, but then it gets funnier. All right. I know a thing or two about training. but I built a reputation in the bodybuilding industry for removing skin. If you have too much skin, call me. Remember, skin is overrated. So the point is even if that vulnerability isn't there, why risk it? Yet at the same time, I'm still a fan of barbell rows. I think probably more than you. We'll get into it here in a minute. But I'm not like, woo woo, I got to do barbell rows because Dusty Henshaw is fucking huge and he's got all this, huge back and he can pull all this weight. I'm not in that group, though I see why he does them. If I grew like Dusty did doing rows, I would be doing rows as well. And I even wonder what Dusty's position is on him. Do you know if he takes the stance of, hey, they worked really well for me, but they're probably not going to work as well for you?
Yeah, because his form for his rows, like his pen lays and his bent over rows, is like, he calls it ugly, right? Where there's a lot of body English, but his contraction's great.
Yeah.
So he goes, don't do rows like me. Like, if you watch all of his other training, he's very open about them, very slow and methodical, perfect execution. But his heavy rows, there's a lot of body English, but you can't argue with it. But like, remember him and JP, Jordan Peters, they had a contest of who could pen lay row. It was either 405 or 505 for 20 reps. So like, again, they're not mortals, right? So like, don't take your training advice from them. But yeah, Dusty and JP come to mind of like, good Lord, with rows. I know, what's his first name? Styles, the guy that used to train with Dusty. Tony
I know
Styles.
who you're talking about, and I can't think of his name.
Super nice dude. From what I've seen online, like he loves them. So like, yes, Dorian Yates did a Yates row where he's more vertical that we were talking about before we recorded. Like, yes, people have done them over the years, but once again, some people are just born with like Teflon in joints, and that is the exception, not the rule.
Yeah, I think we need to do a future topic on how sometimes the large majority of the time, the most gifted of us train mechanically like shit. I mean, I'm sorry. I take nothing away from Cutler's physique. He's insane. Ronnie, the list just goes, you can just go down the list of horrible mechanics. What about the 90s side laterals? I mean, look, if I was a kid and I looked at side laterals from the 90s of Sean Ray and Kevin Lavroni doing, I'd want to do them that way too. And yet that's not going to work if you're not gifted, but that's a different rabbit hole. I don't want to go on a tangent here, but that would make for a great topic.
Because you try to replicate Branch or Johnny, like your spine's going to be on the floor next to you.
Yeah.
Almost like the freaking new Alien movie. I turned it on, a guy's spine fell out. And I was like, oh, all right, yeah,
that's relatable.
Yeah. All right, no,
let's get Chris to use that clip.
Yeah, there we go. All right, so there's a pretty good amount of research, which was pretty cool. So we'll talk about bent over barbell rows. And then unfortunately, a one-arm dumbbell row and a bent over barbell row have never been compared head to head, which kind of surprised me.
Oh.
They compared other stuff. Kind of a weird pairing. We'll talk about it, but yeah, that was a little bit disappointing. And then to all the haters, just stay tuned because I am a huge advocate of one arm rows. But we'll talk that. So bent over barbell rows, no big surprise in this study, right? Between a barbell row, an inverted row. So like hanging upside down and doing your body weight, and a standing cable row, which I'm not a fan of for bodybuilders. We'll come back to in a second.
Hanging upside down. What? Hold on.
Yeah. So you've got the bar and your feet are elevated and you're pulling yourself up.
Oh, okay. All right. When I was a teenager, I had to do that on vacation between the two queen beds.
Yep.
Because I had to sneak a 40-pound dumbbell. So I was like, how am I going to do rows? I got to do rows or I'll never have a huge back. Yeah. Okay. Gotcha.
Yep. So no big surprise. It obviously had the largest amount of activation head to toe of any rowing motion. So, but it had significantly more EMG, specifically of the erectors, right, in the multifidi. So we'll come back to that in a second. But it had the highest demands of core stability and the largest lumbar spine load and requiring the highest spine stiffness. That means if you're not bracing properly, it's not if you get hurt, it's when. Now, that is not to fearmonger, because my number one message in my office, all my patients know, is you're not broken, you're not fragile. I say it at least 2 or 3 times every single visit. But I'm telling you, It's not if, it's when, unless you're gifted with that Teflon lower back. Now, with a bent over barbell row, adjusting the range of motion can change emphasis on paper a little bit. So that upper half is more lat, the lower half is more trap. But so long as you're doing a full range of motion, you're going to work both, obviously. So long as the time under tension is equated for, you're still going to get the same amount of recruitment. In this study, they did a 2-second positive, a 2-second negative. The rear delts and the biceps had no change of the range of motion, but you could maybe get a little bit more trap versus lat. Now, does the grip matter of, pronated, neutral, supinated? Now, this is a study we've talked about before that was done on pull-ups. So we're extrapolating that for bent over rows because I couldn't find any studies there. But there's an interesting fact that I didn't cover the last time we talked about this. So I'm going to do my best to give a 10,000 foot view. Pronated, so palm down. That's going to have increased forearm extensor and pronator teres activation. Therefore, that is your biggest risk to developing tennis elbow from a rowing variation is palms down. So if you have tennis elbow, you're getting those warning signs. We did I literally gave my exact blueprint of how I assess and treat tennis elbow in a previous episode, right? If you're starting to get that pain, get away from a pronated position, right? Conversely though, if you're somebody who has you have strained this ligament here called your UCL, Tommy John Little Leaguer's elbow, pronated will actually support the elbow and help that. So again, depending on what your injury history is, some option might be better, some option might be not. So with a pronated grip, you had increased middle trap recruitment compared to neutral. But here's the biggest thing. Not only is the bicep less active compared to neutral supinated due to less mechanical advantage, there's something called reduced spinal excitability, which I'm going to try and keep this as simple as possible. Basically, as soon as you pronate your wrist, the nerves in the spinal cord that help control movement are less responsive, right? So essentially that means it alters sensory information from the muscles and joints to send to the spinal cord and brain. So it makes it harder for the nerves to control the muscles. So basically that's why the spinal cord is less ready to activate your bicep when you're pronated, which means like force steadiness and muscle activation are reduced. So especially as you're hitting failure, you might notice I'm like kind of like shaky a little bit when I'm hitting failure. Not as the force isn't as fluid, right? So it's pretty interesting. It happens specifically in the biceps. This does not occur in the lower body to my extent, but it is interesting when you pronate. Yes, it's obviously extensors and pronator, but it's dramatically taking the bicep out of that. So if you're coming back from a bicep injury, again, maybe that's a case to do a palms down grip and all your back movements for a period of time. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Neutral will be brachioradialis, which we already know. Now, neutral grip right here does decrease middle trap and forearm extensors compared to the overhand pronated. And then supinated increases bicep and lat activation, and that has increased spinal excitability compared to the pronated. But you and I will both agree, I do not like supinated palms up barbell rows because of the injury risk.
Yeah.
You will have decreased infraspinatus and pronator teres activation, right?
Decrease.
Yep.
Oh, okay.
Yep. And then let me do one more thing and then let's pull up the my anatomy app because I think I could put names to it.
I like that.
Grip width, of course, the wider you go, it shifts it more upper back, so rear delt trap. Narrower, more lat and biceps. Does the bar path or position of where you're pulling the bar matter? It kind of does and it kind of doesn't. Now, the study on the screen was doing isometric, so take it with a grain of salt, right? So if you were doing an isometric with the bar lower, so a lower bar position, so right above the kneecap, that made it more hip dominant in terms of using your hip musculature to stabilize. If you did mid bar, which is what most people do, I think, mid thigh, that shifted it a little bit to be more knee dominant, but the hips were still recruited. That position had the highest ground reaction forces, which means you have the greatest potential for max force output on paper in a vacuum, and then super high, pulling it to your hip crease kind of took the loading demands off the hips and the knees and made it more balanced. So basically, with all that said, where you pull the bar, it doesn't make a huge difference for musculature, more so than hand position and, wide versus narrow.
Performance chiropractic and sports medicine in the Houston Bay Area, telemedicine and nutrition coaching all over Texas. And if you're not in Texas, don't worry. You still do consults through the educatedmeathead.com, where you also find workout programs, seminar recordings, and online courses.
But it seems like if you're pulling that bar to like mid thigh, you probably have the advantage to be your strongest. And foot position, ankle position doesn't really matter.
Okay,
right?
Pulling to mid thigh or pulling from mid?
So they were doing isometric. So according to this, they're seeing like where is the loading pattern going, like what is stabilizing, and then measuring like through a force plate, how much force you're putting down. Yeah. So it was an isometric. So again, we've got to be mindful, but really it doesn't seem to matter a ton other than pull it to where you feel the best, both in your low back and your upper back musculature. Because some people will, if I, put my feet from here to here, it's going to change it. And it's going to change your base of support, but it ain't changing muscle recruitment up top.
Right.
Yep. So
I'm just jotting down notes so that because I have some questions and I don't want to jump in yet because I have a habit of getting in too early.
So important muscles, everybody knows bicep, but what people might not know is this guy right here. That is called your pronator teres. So that's going to be very active in an overhand position. That is part of the musculature that gets really, really irritated with golfer's elbow, right? So there's that muscle that people might not know a ton about. And then here is your infraspinatus, right? So that is the most active rotator cuff muscle when pressing. And we found that the supinated palms up grip reduced involvement of both of those. Just FYI, when we are pulling, this guy called your subscap is the most active rotator cuff muscle, right? So if somebody's having pain in like a rotator cuff distribution pattern on their shoulder, I'm like, is it with pressing? Is it with pulling? In 99 out of 100 times, whatever they tell me, I go to that muscle. That's the one I end up treating, right? So just a fun fact. So subscap's really important for that. I think everybody knows back muscles, but just in case, there's your upper traps, there's your middle traps, there's your lower traps, there's your rear delt. Here's your rhomboids, right? And then here is your teres minor, and here's your teres major. People lump teres major and teres major and the lat together all the time. They are very similar, but there is some differences, and you want a very thick teres major. They can be thick as a bicep, and that's what gives you that crazy wide V taper. So keep that with a grain of salt. And then,
but it's the lats. We need to grow the lats. Yeah, that is something that's been around for a long time. We conflate the two as an industry. And I think that's part of well, how do I make my lats wider? Chins make my lats wider. Again, conflating.
And we've covered that multiple times. We'll cover it again. Last little tidbit. This has the mechanical advantage to externally rotate your arm when your elbow's by your side. But as soon as your elbow gets up in space, the infraspinatus has the mechanical advantage to do so. So just fun little tidbits.
Okay. So let me ask this question.
Sharing my screen?
Because it just goes, what's that?
Keep sharing my screen or get out of it?
Okay. The reason is this, because timing is perfect. If from that position right there, the model raises their arms straight up, I'm doing it right now.
Forward.
Okay. And then the model externally rotates. Let's just say palms up.
So do the original motion first, real quick, please.
Okay. Here. Oh wait, no, I'm sorry. Neutral.
Okay. Neutral. Yep.
And then external rotate to where the palms are facing up.
Yep. That is supination.
Okay. Now that is here's why I bring this up. This is one of the movements that I do prior to my back, chest, and shoulder training. And I understand the viewers are getting really frustrated with me because I haven't done the video yet. And all I'll say to that, to justify it, though it may sound like an excuse, there have been some things that have happened here over the course of the last couple weeks from a personal family standpoint, that as I try to video that stuff later in the week, there are obstacles there. So I apologize, because I know a lot of people have reached out for that. I know a lot of people are waiting for that. And I apologize. I could not get it done today for us to discuss it. But barring some catastrophic incident this next week, it will be in the following episode. And Dr. Marv and I are going to go over that. He's going to critique it. And quite frankly, we're not getting together prior. So I'm going to demonstrate, and he's going to be like, oh, okay, that's garbage. That doesn't really do anything, though you think it might. Really, you're going to critique it. But one of the movements that I do, there's like five or six, and it only takes like 6 minutes or so consistently once I get doing. But that is one of them where so I'm throwing in a little bit of a teaser, a little bit of a like, okay, I haven't got it done yet, but this is one of them where it is all it is this opening up. But there are other components to it. As an example, I only do that with the scapula open. So not retracted, but protracted. So that's one of the movements. So I'm throwing in something to kind of get people to the next episode, because then we will detail all of it.
Which makes sense, because that muscle has the mechanical advantage to do so when your arm is in space, versus by your side, then the teres minor has the mechanical advantage. So that makes a ton of sense, because you want to warm up rotator cuff, you want to warm up rotation. What do I say every single episode? Rotation. Well, maybe not every episode. Every patient comes in office hears this, they're sick of it. Rotation is the name of the game, so long as there's not an acute injury, i.e. a UCL tear, strain, a meniscus, an ACL. If you just only spend your warm-up going after rotation, every single direction improves. Flexion, extension, abduction, adduction, rotation. Every joint rotates, even your elbows, even your knees. You go after rotation, it's the biggest bang for your buck, because people go, I don't got time to warm up. We're not asking you, and I know you don't do the same, we're not asking you to spend 20, 30 minutes to warm up.
Right.
Like, it's 5 to 10 minutes, ideally targeted to your unique scenario. But you doing that rotation, warming up that rotator cuff, makes a hell of a lot of sense. I'm sure I'm going to agree with most things. I was
thinking the same thing, based on the fact of just what you said in the last couple minutes. You might high five me for this one, because it is really simple. It is based on rotation, but I'm telling you, it is a game changer. And 2 weeks off after the show, got stiff again. It took me a couple sessions of going through I'll call it the rotation warm up. That's essentially what it is. It's focused around that rotation through different planes and different specific positions. And it's freaking awesome.
Nice.
Not just for the proactive injury standpoint, though that's a huge part of it, obviously, but also for when you do a front double bicep, rear double bicep, the scapula open evenly. One doesn't want to hide away.
Yep.
So cool. All right. Good deal. I threw him a little bit of a bone, and I do apologize. There have just been things that have been out of my control that I'm like, oh man, this stinks.
If people knew what both of us had behind the scenes,
that is true.
Shocked.
They might be a little more understanding.
It's almost done though. It's almost done.
Right. And yours is 100 times mine. Don't get me wrong.
Hey, we don't need to compare.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah. One-arm rows versus barbell rows. So again, they've only done like the standing cable row. I like that for athletes. I'll program in my athlete programs, because you're standing, you've got to rotate, be explosive. It's a great core movement, but I don't like it for bodybuilding, because you're limited with stability of how heavy you could go. So I'm not a fan of that. I am, however, a fan of the kneeling one-arm cable row you see on screen right now. I love that thing. That cramps my lats up more than almost anything else. So I'm a huge fan of that. But the one-arm standing row, not a huge fan. But we have studies on the one-arm row, and then obviously all the studies I did about the barbell row, so we could indirectly compare. So obviously it is unilateral, so you're going to have more motor unit recruitment. So I like ending with unilateral stuff. We talked about that in that episode, just because it's more of a stimulus. You could recruit more. How can I say that statement? Well, think about it. Say it's at the end of your workout, and you can either do a 2-arm dumbbell row or a 1-arm dumbbell row. 2-arm dumbbell row, if you're crazy strong, you might be doing, 120s, 130s in each hand. But if you go to a one arm, you'll be able to do more than that. You'll be able to do 140, 150, maybe even more, because your brain's able to recruit more of that side because you're not having to do bilateral, right? It's unilateral, so more of the brain can be devoted to that. No big surprise, there is muscle activation difference, especially with the core. So the opposite side oblique and the opposite side multifidi, well, the external oblique in particular, remember X to sex. We made that terrible joke on that core episode. And if you have a history of low back issues and you haven't watched that episode, that's probably the most impactful, like rehab, prehab prevention episode we've ever done. So go to that. But you're going to get a lot of that opposite side, external oblique and multifidi, because you're fighting rotation, which is why a one-arm dumbbell row, and on screen is how I do it. I change the stance because most people do it. The opposite leg is up or they're up on a table. And I think you're just starting a lawnmower. You're using your whole body. You're not really isolating anything. I prefer the same side leg is on the ground as the pulling arm. So you're directly opposing the line of force. It's harder to cheat and rotate and start a lawnmower. And it doubles as one of the all-time best core exercises you could do. So when I have soccer mom Susie and John Doe come into the office and we got to get them lifting, a one-arm row is mandatory as long as their upper body can handle it, because they don't need to be bodybuilders. I know that's not our demographic, but I go, look, we get you to goblet squat, to do a leg curl, to do a one-arm dumbbell row, and maybe an overhead press or a face pull. That is good enough for Gen Pop. You could ride that till the wheels fall off. Big bang for your buck. If you're not doing one-arm rows, and it could be dumbbell, it could be landmine. I love landmine rows that you can see on screen, and there's 2 different stances that I do them. You could even do the Meadows version, right? So Meadows version is going to be a lot more upper back, rear delt, teres major, because it's just like the overhand barbell row. You're going wide, you're pulling the elbow up. So there's a million variations with those. But overall, as would be expected, there's still less demands on the low back and low back stiffness with a one-arm row than a two-arm row. So people with a back injury history like you and I have, one-arm rows should be doable. And our goal is to get you back to that, because also what replicates real world more? A perfectly weighted bar that you're going to grab perfectly, or is one side going to be uneven, or you're only going to grab something from one side? So the one-arm rows are much more impactful for day-to-day, and double is a great core exercise. If you haven't done a one-arm dumbbell row in a while and you go heavy, even if you're only your version of heavy is relative, right? So we're not Dusty, we're not Jordan. If you haven't done dumbbell rows in a while, man, and say, you do some hard sets with like an 80, 85 pound dumbbell in the stance that I showed, pulling the elbow down to the hip. So I don't want you using your upper back, right? It is a lat focused row. Shameless plug, look at our elbow episode. Man, people got a lot of homework to do. That's really going to drive the lat, and your core, you're going to be sore the next day. Like, it doubles up. So I love it.
When there's a lower back injury we blame it on twisting when it comes to one arm rowing. Wouldn't it be the external oblique, the opposite? I mean, that's the most vulnerable position, isn't it?
Yeah. Usually it would be like multifidi spinal stabilizers. So let me show that real quick, since I've brought it up multiple times. I think I've had 2 people pop an oblique with a one-arm row. Usually it's deads, but usually it's going to be like a multifidi or something like that, because we do not have conscious control of those, and they're so damn important.
And while you're pulling that up, let me just ask this too. I would guess that the strength, especially if you haven't been doing one-arm dumbbell rows, the strength of that stabilizing external oblique and that other multifidi thing that you said, is going to be, the strength is going to be significantly less. So it's already in a vulnerable position based on a strength standpoint compared to the muscles that are actually doing the row. Would you agree with that, or am I off? And that's actually a really strong muscle.
No, because we do everything as bodybuilders straight up and down. That's why we always get hurt if we have to move in any other plane of motion, right? Because that's all we do. So
Right.
it's, yeah, you can't tolerate, right? Like if you don't rotate.
It just seems like it would take very little
Yep.
to be able to, you know, to really mess that up.
But look at how much. So obviously there's your lats, your thoracolumbar fascia. That could be uber thick. When people have lifted for a period of time, when I'm dry needling, good God, I've got to add a good amount of force to get through this type of fascia, like especially my power lifters, strongmen. Then we have our erectors. So these are the ones you could consciously control, and they're firing. Well, that consciously control is kind of a misnomer. You can't like flex it like you can a bicep, but these are moving all the time. But these are these huge stabilizers. This is an important muscle for rib cage mechanics. I go another layer lower, right? So you still have those. Then you have your QL we've talked about multiple times, where powerlifters, bodybuilders are notorious because we do everything straight up and down. So that's going to be really important for a one arm row stabilizing, especially the same side pulling. So you're not, you know, if I'm pulling my left arm, the right side's got to really fire, so I'm not caving in and bending my entire torso to the left. So that's getting worked a ton. There's your TVA. Here are still erectors, but look how deep I'm going. Now we're getting to our multifidi and then these other guys, right? Those, they're really big on this model. They're not. They're paper thin. We don't have conscious control of them. Those are buggers when they go. But like, see how deep that is? And then we have one more layer where then you have even smaller guys, your interspinalis, your intertrans, like you have all these stabilizers. We can't consciously control them. So do your core work, do multiple directions of motion. Here's your diaphragm. We're going to bring this back when we do my Rehab Rodeo Roundup stuff. But there's your diaphragm. Okay, it is part of the core, so we'll come back to that in a second.
Okay, fair enough. Got a couple questions, but I don't know if you want them yet.
Yep. Oh. Nope. That's pretty much the research I have. There's a couple variations of rows I like if you're going to do them. Like I'm not opposed to them if you're somebody whose history shows you could handle bent over rows, but too many people force them, and I don't think.
Yeah, and when I say I'm a fan of the bar, I don't differentiate. Is from a vulnerability standpoint, the barbell row and the T-bar row. I see them both as equally vulnerable. One, obviously, being the T-bar has more of a forward pull. So there is that, which is why on a lot of T-bar, I call them platform machines, lever machines, I guess. You can't stay in that low position as the weight gets heavier because it just wants to pull you over. So for stability, you really don't have much of a choice. You have to stand up more as the weight gets heavier. The good thing is I say newer, a T-bar row now versus say the early 80s has a bend in the back before the pivot point. So, and when I say back, the back of the bar, where normally you would put, say, a T-bar into a corner, and you would do it from the floor, which quite frankly, I think is, I don't want to say it's a great move, but it's a movement that is so close to the platform T-bar row that I don't see much of a difference there other than the bar that you use is not going to be fixed. So you have a little bit of a balancing act there. As an example, if you were to put a V-bar, which most people do, on the bar to do old school T-bar rows where the bar is in the corner, if you pull back too hard, the bar will slide. So you have to stay balanced in a sense so that bar doesn't slide. And I think I still think that those two compare very, very closely. The T-bar row platform and the T-bar from the floor. But with the T-bar from the floor, you don't have to stand up as much. Why aren't they making these platforms that you stand on a little bit more mechanically correct, I guess? They did put the bend in the back, which helps because then as you come up, you are still getting It's going to be, I'm going to put up a couple videos of me doing them from the side, and you'll be able to see the angle of the bend in the bar that kind of matches the fact that if you were pulling straight from the floor and it was just a barbell, you'd be like, that's a Yates row, you're up too high. But because of that bend in the bar, you're still getting a backward pull, even though it appears that you're standing up a little bit higher than you should be. And there are, of course, so many variations too. Where do you want to hit the back? You want to hit the, predominantly rhomboid middle traps, and you want to go high on your back? Okay. If you want to move down a bit, then arguably then you have the other extreme, which is the old school Arnold row, where his back was almost parallel with the floor. And I know that's when I first started doing it, because I started training in 83. That's how we did them.
Yep.
Man, if I tried to do a barbell row like that, maybe even with 135 pounds, I'd be done. One of my discs would shoot up and hit the light. Or maybe not the disc, but the disc gel would shoot out of my back and hit the ceiling. Anyway, I am a fan of the barbell row, the T-bar row, the old school, the platform, whatever, but as a finisher.
Yep.
Because then you're not dealing with that. You're not dealing with as much strength. So there's less vulnerability on the lower back there. It's almost like, for lack of a better, I hate to use the Weeder principles here, which was brilliant from a marketing standpoint. So good for him. But the pre-exhaust method of pre-exhausting your back and then coming in at the end where you're not putting the erectors under such a huge load so that I couldn't get to the button. You just can't pass up huge load. I don't care how mature you are, you just can't pass that up. Now, when you're pre-exhausting, then all the muscles of the upper back, then the lower back, you're not going to have any, or shouldn't have anywhere near the stabilizer vulnerability, versus if you're going to open with them. And again, I'll be the first to admit, if I was able to pull the weights that someone like Dusty can pull, and my back could grow like Dusty's back, I would have them in the beginning. But I'm going to speak for you, me, and the 99.99% of the viewers and say that we are mere mortals and we are not gifted genetically. So it's less likely that we're going to be growing from that. And I would also even go so far as to say this. If you mistake your genetic potential and it's just great and you don't know it, you're still going to grow like hell from less vulnerable exercises. It's not like one day you're going to wake up and go, man, my career would have gone so much farther. I probably would have been on the Olympia stage had I just done barbell rows instead of. It just doesn't work like that.
So actually, we had a question from Bugatti Official about the old school T-bar row in the corner and a V handle. So he asked, still a good exercise if machines made it obsolete. So it sounds like you're a fan of it.
I am, but I still say that there are better angles with advance in technology with equipment, but I don't want to necessarily rule it out if it were to be a finisher. And I also want to add, because I think this is important, not the Ronnie row, not a lot of the rows. I'm even going to bust on Dr. Scott a little bit because he does Ronnie rows, or he did. And I just don't, he's a smart guy, and clearly he knows what he's doing with his training. I don't want to use that method because I just think the range of motion is so minimal on the back. There is a huge load. I got to the button that time. There is that huge load potential in the sense that there's a lot of stimulus. There's a lot of, but with that comes that huge vulnerability, and especially in Dr. Scott's age demographic, which I can say and get away with because I'm in that same age demographic. If you were 25, it'd be like, okay, you're probably not going to mess anything up. And if you do, you'll be ready to go in a week and you can row again. The rest of us can't do that. So there is that component, but I just think there are better exercises. I'm getting really long-winded. I apologize.
I hate the V-bar. It's biomechanically not great.
Why?
You're
narrow?
So close.
Yeah.
Yep. So your elbows are flaring out. So now you're getting a lot of subscap and it's biceps.
Yep.
And then you see kids doing the Ronnie rows. Like, it is incredible. Every time I see that, I'm like, when is the bicep going to pop? Like,
but
literally.
Give me a V-bar that is a little bit wider.
So of course it's me. When for a period of time I did do bent over T-bar rows, and then finally just with my back I gave up. I bought an attachment to where it was shoulder width, right?
Yeah.
So at least shoulder width is biomechanically better and it helps. Think about it, even with the seated cable row, you're going to be stronger, but anytime I get somebody off the close grip V-bar and they do a shoulder width, even a seated cable, I'm like, you're not going to be able to load it as much, but do you finally feel it in your back versus your biceps? Oh, yep. So are you ego lifting or are you lifting for a purpose?
Mm-hmm.
And then the jerking that you see, especially in the young demographic of, they'll do Ronnie's 8 plates and here's my 8 plates. And they're dry humping, there's 6 inches range of motion. And that weight is slamming down. It's slamming down on your bicep, your forearms, and your low back. It's job security for me.
Yeah.
But biomechanically, there's so many better options. So
now I do have a question here that I want to get into because I have a hard time processing this. And this is a brain that has been that has dealt with training for 41 years. Mm-hmm. I'm pretty good with mechanics and being able to see and comprehend things. But what I don't understand is this. I have a hard time with when it is said that during a row, and I'm going to use the barbell row as an example, that where you pull or the path of the bar involves more lat than it does upper back. And the reason that I have a hard time with that is I think, and I've argued this with Dr. Scott Stevenson too, or tried, but I see very little lat involvement because mechanically the lats are supposed to pull the shoulder blades down. I don't see a downward pull in a barbell row. So I can see it from, let's say, a long pulley row where the pulley is slightly higher. Then you have a slight downward pull versus the hammer strength, which this pull is here. We have lat involvement. We're increasing the lat involvement as the angle goes up. Once that angle is, or that attachment, I'm trying to explain it the best I can. The attachment is below the shoulder blade. I don't see how the lats are being stimulated with any significance because the lats then are not pulled. In my brain, they're not being pulled down. So talk me off the ledge on this, or make me understand how being, like, say, up like we are, upright in a barbell row, how the lats stabilize. Okay, I can see that, but I don't see it as a prime mover. Maybe that's a better way to explain it. But like I said, talk me off the ledge or tell me to jump.
Yeah. So no, I'm with you. I typically, in my mind, a bent over row is upper back dominant. Like any row is typically upper back, unless you're doing, like a Dante high pull or this other stuff. So I agree with you. The research just always talks about large symmetrical recruitment of the lat. But also, it's usually similar activation to both the rear delt and the trap.
As an educated meathead, I want to be doing everything I can to recover from each training session. Rapid reboot compression therapy is one of the tools in my tool belt that I not only use in just my office, but myself after every single leg session, and it really makes a difference. Use my promo code Dr. Marvin Says to save money on any of the compression systems. That is definitely Dr. Marv approved.
But I'm with you where I think upper back's doing a hell of a lot more work, unless you're doing the really narrow supinated. But still, that just makes me nervous for the bicep. We've talked about it multiple times.
But if you're pulling low, then there would be arguably less vulnerability than pulling high. But that goes back to your statement about, I'm
no, you're good. You're good.
But that goes back to, because I think you've made this statement, but correct me if I'm wrong. I think I've just heard it so much that I get confused on who has said it. But the high pull, let's just say like a high row into the, say, chest or upper abdominal versus lower abdominal or into the hip. A lot of times it is said, the low into the hip is more lat involvement. That's the part that I have a problem with. I can see where the higher pull will move the stress higher on the upper back. But I don't see the low pull or the low bar path in a row as being like increasing the lat involvement or stimulus. But I can be wrong.
Because the initial movement is depressing the shoulder and pulling the elbow down, which the lat has a mechanical advantage to. The upper back does not. So you are leading with the elbow, pulling it down. So then that changes the moment arms. Remember, moment arms and fulcrums. That's how it gets the lat.
Okay.
Yeah. Does that make sense?
It
but
does.
I still go, most rows are more upper back based, most vertical pulls. Especially once you get below 90 degrees down or more lat based, you want to do a variety of everything, right? In the study I mentioned earlier, when it was the inverted row, the barbell row, and the standing one arm cable row, the inverted row had the highest EMG for lats. But again, you better be strapping a ton of weight to yourself or weigh super heavy to do that. And there's a bunch of limitations. We know all the limitations. We've talked about it multiple times. But think about what is initiating the movement. What has the greatest fulcrum? If I'm driving elbows down, then that goes from that attachment versus upper back is going to be more up in there. Most people, their lat, what's supposed to be a lat-based movement is trap-based. And you could look at somebody, especially, look at CrossFitters, males and females. They typically have massive traps and not the best lats. They are trap dominant, upper back dominant. You'll see it they're just people, how they rest. They breathe like this. When they lift everything, they shrug and then go, right? So they're going to have a hell of a harder time recruiting lat, which is why then I really focus, and I'll have them do either, if they're a CrossFitter, a one-arm dumbbell row, where literally the cue is pull your elbow down. So I literally visualize pull it down, right? And then if I want upper back, I go elbows out wide, kind of like John Meadows row, right? But once you get somebody who's trap dominant to feel pulling the elbow down, so they're not allowed to shrug up at all, they have that light bulb. They're like, oh my God, I felt my lat fire for the first time. So the elbow down really matters to make that has the mechanical advantage.
Okay, so is it safe to say then the kipping pull-up is absolutely useless when the vast majority of CrossFitters have poor lat involvement in development?
The kipping pull-up pays my bills.
Yeah. I think I've heard it said that the creator of CrossFit,
the guy who brought it to CrossFit, said that was his biggest, to his credit. So, but they still have them, and they still have handstand push-ups, even though a couple years ago, somebody had a burst fracture of her spine,
really,
and drove home. CrossFit headquarters was made aware of this, and they have not changed anything.
Wow.
And I know at one point, I'm just stating facts. At one point, the guy in charge of all the programming had never taken a physiology course, had no training certifications, nothing.
I'm going to go out on a limb and say why I think they did this. I don't think the kipping pull-up was designed originally the way that it had progressed to, with all the kicking and everything. I think what they did is this: we're going to make this movement very black and white. All you have to do is go from full extension to getting your, say, chin over the bar. And then it was the athletes, as usual, who figured out the loopholes and found momentum and the swing and the kick to be able to make that, make those parameters work. And the entire time, the creator of CrossFit is rolling his eyes, much like trainers do when they give clients parameters, and they always find a way around it. I always laugh. It's like the skip load. Well, I want you to have 2 meals over. And then it took me 6 months to figure out that a few of the clients were having these massive meals at 9 a.m. and another massive meal at 9 p.m. I'm like, oh, I guess I got to tighten these parameters and put the 2 meals or put the meals 3 hours apart. It's almost one of those situations where people will find those loopholes if they can find those loopholes, because if all you have to do is go from point A to point B, I'm going to get there any way that I can. That would make more sense to me than someone in a position like that going, yeah, let's do this really effed up movement. So,
my understanding is they're designed for gymnasts to save energy during their routines, right? That's why kipping pull-up.
Okay.
So the mobility demands for a kipping pull-up are incredibly high that most people don't have. Like the amount of shoulder, external rotation, upward rotation, spinal extension, like the mobility demands are crazy high for that. Like I don't have it. I doubt you have. I would go out on a limb and say 85% of people don't have it. The people who have it are most likely born hypermobile, meaning their joints are more loosey-goosey than you and I, which then that's a vulnerability because they already have this excess mobility. And then if you can't control it, that's how you tweak things and get hurt. So again, it was always meant to be for gymnasts.
Yeah.
And we'll get off the soapbox.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
Anyways, but we actually, I know at one point we said we wanted to use the term kipping as that's dumb or something like that. So that's just kipping. So we gotta find a way to work that in somehow. Yeah. Somebody brought that up. You haven't said the word kipping since. I was like, oh, okay. Yep. Obviously, one thing I wanted to say, I'm kind of oversimplifying it, but it's kind of bent over rows are kind of like an incline press. The more vertical you are, it shifts it emphasis more to the upper back. So like Dorian Yates style is a lot of trap. Quit convincing yourself you're doing them right, because you can probably put an extra plate on the side if you're standing, almost vertical, doing them Yates style versus, at least 45 degree. As your torso angle gets closer to more parallel to the ground, like Arnold used to do, it shifts it to the lat. Everybody could see the moment arm and the distance between the shoulder and the bar as you shift forward. But then shearing forces gets bigger on the low back. Bracing is really, really important. So I mentioned in the beginning, and we're going to talk about a little bit of bracing with my rehab stuff today as step one. But as we're flexing forward, those multifidi, those tiny little stabilizers I talked about, they have to start to relax to allow your low back to continue to flex and separate. So you're losing your intrinsic internal stability of the low back and relying on your erectors and your bracing pattern to not cause an issue. Well, that's, if you don't know how to brace, that's not a good idea.
And I think most people don't. I mean, I trained for years.
For a fact they don't, because no matter who comes to me, I don't care if you're squatting 900 pounds, we'll get you stronger because we'll fine tune your bracing. Not because I'm a genius. It's because I follow an approach called DNS, dynamic neuromuscular stabilization. I've talked about it multiple times. It changed my life completely. It is my number one favorite thing to teach clients online and patients in office. It is the biggest life-changing thing. We'll do a little bit of it. I talked about it in our squat episode, where I pretty much gave it away. So go back to that one. But bracing is huge, and most people have no idea. And then also, then they're looking up. When you extend your neck, you extend your low back. So then think about it. You have less internal stability. You're looking up in the mirror, which is dumping your low back into extension. Like, do you see where I'm going with this? Like, it's not if, it's when.
Yep.
So, and that's when the pop happens. And a lot of times it's they finish the rep, they set it down, and when they go to stand back up, that's when it goes. So normally it's not during a rep, it's my last rep or as I was setting it down, So again, your neck should be neutral. Your vision should be a pendulum on an RDL. Your vision should be down on the ground. I will say one thing I used to do, and I know I'm talking way too much, but if you had somebody who just would always like dry hump the air with a bent over row, take an inclined bench, set it up, anchor your forehead there, and your forehead is not allowed to move. You're not going to be able to lift as much, but you're going to be it's providing external stability and giving you an anchor point. And I think that's much better for the average gym goer. So, garage gym trainers, you're going to most likely have to do bent over rows. So be smart about it. And you could also do a chest supported barbell row.
Yeah, I was going to say, because even if you don't brace your head, you might still be dry humping the incline bench, but you're not going to get much momentum out of it. You're not going to be able to pull. I mean, you could potentially screw your neck up if you're trying to pull too much with your head. And I go back to this. I've said this a couple times. Some of the viewers are going to remember me saying this, but I had a training partner before we left Colorado who was a chiropractor. And anytime I would do bent over barbell rows, this was shortly after I had gotten out of my very chronic lower back issues. And
Mhm.
while I was doing bent over rows, he would, and the first time kind of surprised me, but he would walk by and he would poke my glutes with his fingers. That's twice in an episode. I don't want to
Yes.
hear it in the comments about how I don't need to be using that. I'm going to use the button because it's our show. So just ride along with me. Anyway, the point is he would poke my glutes to me, and I'm like, what the hell are you doing? Like, it's distract. Like he hadn't done that before. He laughed. He goes, I'm just making sure that your glutes are activated and they're stabilizing, because that's going to take a huge amount of stress off of your lower back. So as he did, it was just a reminder then, because I wasn't surprised after he did it the first time. If I saw him back there, I figured that's probably what he was going to be doing. But it was a reminder after how many years? Almost what? Probably 35 years of training at that point. So there are a lot of veterans who think they have, because they might have the strength in their erectors, but that bracing is not always there or as optimal as possible. So take a look at that. Even if you think it's good, take a look at it, double check, make sure that it's solid. And one more thing too, I don't want to forget about the pendlay row. Okay. Did you comment on it?
So I like pendlay rows real quickly. Let's go before we go to pendlay. You could, pulling with a trap bar, or even will kind of take some shearing force off the low back. I also like belt squat bent over rows, right? Now the cables, because the resistance profile is fluid, is actually going to increase stability demands. But that could be a nice little variation, so that you're not having that big crazy resistance profile change.
How about the Smith machine on the angle from the last episode? We have that too.
So that makes sense. And then pendlay rows, if you could brace properly and you have good form, they are phenomenal strength builders. I mean, good God, because people don't realize how much elastic recoil energy they rely on to lift the load. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, next time, say you're going to do a chest supported row, like a machine, dumbbell, barbell. Instead of going to the bottom, immediately pulling, I want you to go to the bottom, stretch out, protract your shoulder blades, wait for 2 to 4 seconds even, and then pull. You take away all the elastic energy. People don't realize they're using rubber band effect to start most positive concentrics, right? So the pendlay takes that out of it. It's really big in strength athletes. I think it's phenomenal. You want to build just total body strength, man, that's up there. But again, you got to know how to brace. You got to be doing it right. But if you've never played around with taking the elastic recoil out, and it could be whatever movement, it does any movement you want. Next time you do a dumbbell chest press, don't just rebound up or slam the bar if you're doing a machine on your chest. 1001, 1002, then go. It's a total new world.
That's how I have benched. Because if I bench, I only finish with them, and they're what I call stop reps. I literally stop the bar on my chest before I go back up. It might not be a 2 count or a 3 count. I don't do the count thing, and I'm not knocking it. I'm saying I don't do it. It just dead stop reps. There is no momentum there. One last question I have for you, because I don't want to forget. I think it's important. As the angle comes up and we get into a Yates row, would you agree that there is typically more brachialis involvement with that angle, because people tend to, even though they aren't supposed to, they tend to, with that upward pull, they pull more from the brachialis?
Yeah, because I would say most rowing is it's like a 2-to-1 brachialis to biceps. And most people are rowing pronated, like we talked about, which the spinal cord, right? The nerve excitability changes. So yeah, I think, and this is made up numbers, so to each their own, I would say it's like 2-to-1 brachialis to biceps on most rowing, but especially overhand.
So the most vulnerable position, I think we can both agree, is an under grip Yates row.
Under grip, Arnold style, totally parallel to the ground.
Really? Okay. See, I had the upward.
Well, I'm talking about low back. I'm thinking about low back.
Okay. I was thinking biceps. I'm sorry. Okay.
If you're talking biceps only, yeah, because people are going to get really sloppy with their form and they're going to slam that. Yeah. I mean, I've got shit elbows, so that just hurt. God, that's so pathetic. Thank God. I mean, good Lord. But yeah, for the bicep, I agree. For everything head to toe, the Arnold way probably, but you're not going to be able to load it up as much, right? Like if you noticed on my belt squat, because I don't do them, it was a tutorial for clients. Like I'm pretty damn parallel, and it's super slow and controlled. When I do program bent over rows for people, I'm with you. It's not the first movement of the day, right? But you've got to have muscular endurance and know how to brace. I will not prescribe a bent over row unless I know the person knows how to brace.
Understood. Smash or pass it.
So I'm going to smash my posit that the bent over barbell row, while has some merits and some people who are genetic freaks could obviously show results, I think we should leave it in the past.
Now, the only reason that I'm going to go against you and I'm going to pass on the posit is this. I still like them as a finisher. I like them and I think you do too, in specific situations. But as far as them being a kind of like the squats or the king of leg development, I'm going to pass on that all day. I still strongly believe deads are not a bodybuilding movement, that not that there isn't a benefit, but that there's not the ROI that everybody thinks there is from a bodybuilding standpoint. And I'm also that's why I'm passing on the posit of the barbell row, because I feel the same way. It has its place and it can be beneficial. But by and large, it's misunderstood that this is going to provide most people with a huge back and great back development from a bodybuilding standpoint. And I think that is incorrect. So that's why I'm passing on it. Given those specific, I know we actually for once, I think
we disagree.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And yet at the same time, there are still those parallels that we still have where it's kind of like, well, under this circumstance, okay. Yes. Okay. If you are built to barbell squat like a Dusty Hinge, okay. But yet I still say Dusty would have gotten great back development. And he may say no, and that's okay. But it would still have had great back development, I think, had he not done heavy barbells or heavy barbell rows and transitioned more to machines and that sort of thing. But that's we could argue that till we're blue in the face because it's a hypothetical. We don't know that.
He attributes barbell training to his back.
He has to, though, in fairness, because he hasn't done anything else. I mean, not that he hasn't done anything else. He does other things. But if that were the case, then I would say, okay, I'd put Dusty on the hot seat and be like, okay, then why are you doing hammer strength rows? Why are you doing these? Or, but, I mean, let's be fair. You know what I mean? It's a combination of a lot of things. But I guess I would phrase it this way. I would wonder if we went back and he built a solid strength core, like a core of strength from the barbell rows, and then moved on from them to machines, if his back wouldn't be equally as good or even maybe arguably better. I don't know. I mean, there are a lot of things I could go back and do and say, I wonder if I'd have done this, I would have. So I'm not trying to single him out. I'm just using him as the example because so many people know him and they know that he barbell rows as the core of his back training and how good his back is and where it came from. I'm not taking anything from the guy. He knows that. Just putting him on the hot seat for a minute. But anyway, that's our smash about for this episode. We disagree on, which is cool. Let's transition to it's the Prehab Rehab Rodeo Roundup. Woohoo! I love that.
Yes. All right. So everybody get ready to eye roll, but then hear me out. So there's a lot of those this episode. Today, we're going to go over diaphragmatic versus paradoxical breathing. That makes a world of difference for people suffering from neck and low back pain and is a prerequisite to learn how to breathe and brace properly so you could potentially bend over row in the future and not have to book an emergency flight, come out to me in Houston for me to treat and put you back together. So I see this all the time in the office. I screen this for every single person who comes in, is when people are standing and talking to me, I'm looking at their belly and I am looking at their shoulders, and are they a shoulder breather or are they a belly breather? So when we are breathing, we should not have shoulder elevation. It should be diaphragmatic breathing. It should be coming from the abdomen. We don't like to do that because of societal pressures, right? Nobody wants to stick their belly out. Everybody's sucking
But it
it in.
used to be said. I know when I was younger, I went to do this choir thing. It was like an advanced choir thing. And one of the main things he stopped me and told me was that I needed to breathe through my rib cage and not through my stomach. So I was like, oh, okay. So, and I understand things change over the years. Don't get me wrong. But I'm saying with our demographic, there may be other people who have heard that too. I mean, that's how I was taught from a breathing standpoint. And then it changed at some point.
Yep. So let's talk about neck and we'll talk about low back, but this is big. And then when we get stressed out, what do? We do this.
Oh yeah. Get tight.
We hold all our tension, whether you're trap dominant, like I talked about earlier or not. So how can you tell if you're doing this? Well, you put one hand on your chest, one hand on your belly. It's honestly easiest if you're lying face up, because then you could feel the relationship and just see what hand is moving. Okay. So if your chest hand is moving, your belly hand isn't moving, that's not ideal. We want to fix that. So the easiest way is to lie face up with your knees bent. You're feeling the relationship. If you still breathe through your shoulders while you're laying face up, just have somebody push down on your shoulders and hold that there for about a minute. That forces you to figure out how to breathe through your belly. They take their shoulders away. Their hands off your shoulders, and most people could keep that pattern. So why would this matter? Because it's going to matter for neck, which will then translate to shoulder mobility and all that. So the diaphragm is the lid of the oil drum or the cylinder that is stabilizing the low back. It has a direct connection to hip flexors and all that. So see how this is kind of cut off? If I extend it, see how now we're having direct connections with everything. So the diaphragm is massive for stabilizing the low back. And DNS type bracing, there's different ways to brace, but I'm a DNS guy. That is diaphragmatic. So you're bracing by pushing out your midsection a perfect 360 degrees. Okay, so if you're always breathing through your shoulders, you've lost the ability to maximally stabilize your low back. You add that where people look up in the mirror when they're doing their deadlifts and their bent over rows, like I've talked about, it's a recipe for a disaster. Now, but you're not broken, you're not fragile. This is fixable. So I'm not trying to make people paranoid, but you've got work to do. Then in the neck, if you're doing paradoxical breathing, you are breathing through muscles of the neck that should only help us breathe when we are actually working out and winded. So they're called accessory muscles. In particular, our scalenes. And guess what runs between your scalenes? All the nerves that go in your arm. So that is called your brachial plexus, right? When those get tight, we get numbness, tingling, blah, blah, blah. Then we have this guy, your levator scapula. That is your traps helper. I've talked about that multiple times. That should not be elevating your shoulder blade for you to constantly be breathing through your shoulders. Those should only help you breathe when you did your 20 rep pen lay rows to death that Dusty and JP were doing, right? Or you're doing your HIIT cardio or hard lifting. It shouldn't be day to day. If we're always breathing through the chest with paradoxical breathing, the levator and the scalenes in particular start to get, shortened because they're always in a shortened position. So they start getting tighter. And I've talked about this before, but it's been a couple episodes. When this levator gets, and its job is, yes, side bending, but think about if I'm always breathing slightly through the shoulders. Now, this is an exaggerated shoulder elevation, but if you're always doing that, that muscle is going to always be in a somewhat short position. It's not lengthening. Well, remember, and then so by definition, if it attaches to the shoulder blade, it's going to be harder for my shoulder blade to go out wide, i.e. protract, i.e. a lat spread, a front relaxed, proper lifting mechanics. Okay. And then your rib cage, let me quit sharing my screen. Remember how I said earlier on, your rib cage is very malleable, so it changes shape based on how you breathe, muscle tone, tension, blah, blah, blah. Well, if that muscle is always tight, then it's going to start to compress your upper back ribs, which then makes it harder for the shoulder blade to move. So it's 1 + 1 = 3. So one of the biggest foundational things is somebody comes in with low back pain, neck pain, and they're breathing like this. The first thing we're going to do is do breathing pattern. So one hand on your chest, one hand on your belly. Some people need to set a timer in their phone to remind them, right? So you have to do it several times throughout the day. Just check where you're at. I really like pairing this, checking your breathing pattern with something called box breathing, which is actually research. So like Wim Hof breathing got really popular a couple of years ago. It's amazing what he does, but when it was studied, to my understanding, when I looked at those studies a couple of years ago, it didn't find any efficacy in it. But this does. Box breathing is what our U.S. Navy SEALs use on their missions to regulate their nervous systems. Is being taught day one of PTSD courses for combat vets. Helps with anxiety, insomnia, panic attacks, blah, blah, blah. Now, remembering to do it when you're in the heat of it is easier said than done. But all 4 sides of a box are the same. So you do a 4 to 8 second inhale, the same interval hold. So I start patients in office 4-second inhale, 4-second hold, 4-second exhale, 4-second hold. So you're doing that rhythmic breathing, checking your breathing pattern. It centers you, it calms you down, it quiets the mind. We get breathing better, we get out of this position. All of a sudden, your neck is less tense. If these get really chronically tight, they'll start to trigger headaches. Usually, temple is tied to up here, right? So, breathing, go ahead.
I'm sorry.
I'll say breathing, it's boring. You're like, aren't I breathing right? I'm like, you're getting air in and out, but there is levels to this. And step one, before I teach anybody how to properly brace for lifting, one hand on chest, one hand on belly, make sure that belly hand's moving. So when you're breathing properly, the gut should be getting sucked out. I know nobody wants to hear that, especially in our world. Suck it in, flex for all your photo shoots, your videos, your pictures. But day to day, I don't want you doing a vacuum all day long and breathing like that.
Now, when you're talking about the muscles of the back, or the back of the neck, is there any connection to us being, because I would think that there almost has to be, us being tighter and arguably even breathing, through our rib cage more than we should, based on the fact that we do a lot of this and moving our thumbs. I know I was making my chicken last night, and in between I was on my phone and everything, and finally I had to put my head back, and I'm like, good God, the muscles in the back of my neck just don't want to hold my big melon up right now. I just want to set it back here and relax. So on occasion,
I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but I know it's called an anterior head carriage. The further your head goes forward, the more load your neck has to work. So then that'll tighten up. Then you've got a core of your neck muscles. When they get weak and inhibited from this position or from whiplash, then the muscles on the back of the neck crank on more to try to stabilize, and that compounds it. So I'm always looking at the core of the neck for neck pain, and I know that's a second topic, so maybe in the future we'll do that. But step one, just check your breathing pattern. Do it multiple times throughout the day. When you get stressed out, everybody's been there. You get stressed out, you start clenching your jaw, and also like, man, my neck's getting tight, feeling that. Check your breathing pattern. If you have the luxury of doing box breathing, it's super helpful. But I really like having my athletes do a little bit of the breathing right before they train, right? Especially if you could do some box breathing. So then you're getting your nervous system and, a little helps you get into the flow state or the green room, like you talk about. And then in all my programs, what I do when you're leaving the gym and driving home, listen to classical music and box breathe on your drive home. Get you out of that sympathetic fight or flight drive. Get you into rest and digest. You'll be able to eat quicker. Your blood sugar will drop quicker. You're able to accept food, right? Because when you've trained really hard, you don't want to eat. You're amped up. You're kind of nauseous, blah, blah, blah. Doing that box breathing, listening to classical music or calming music, but research on classical music is pretty remarkable. It could really help get you out of that fight or flight, because what do? We're in a go, 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 go world, to where we have, okay, this is my opinion. This is not research, so take it with a grain of salt. But like, our ancestors didn't have this low level nagging like stress. It was like, oh shit, there's a tiger trying to eat me.
Right.
Like, and then I'm calm. And then I got to find, but we just have this little, just wearing and wearing and wearing. So we always have this slight sympathetic drive. And I think that's why, then there's stress and then blah, blah, blah. Like, I think it just compounds. So I'll get off my high horse, but breathing is huge. I know bodybuilders be like, why the F is Dr. Marv talking about this? Just trust me. It is step one to learn how to brace. And it's amazing when you can get your neck to relax, then your shoulder blades move better. You're going to get into a better pose. You're going to be able to get a little bit further reach in the gym. You're going to be able to stabilize your low back. And then maybe you could do bent over rows and tell us how dumb we are.
Exactly.
Yeah.
On that note, let's transition to Skip's cheat meal review.
I got my notes ready. I'm going to order whatever you say today. I'm ordering.
We got number 1 coming up too.
All right.
I'm going to run down the top 4 or the top 5, 4 of the top 5, just as kind of a refresher. But number 5 was the Detroit Cookie Company. Normal cookies. Remember, these need to be cookies, not 14-pound decadent desserts. Number 4 is Ray's Cookie Company in Seattle. Number 3 is Moonshine Cookie Company. They're in Tennessee and they're great. Smaller cookies, smaller than any of the other cookies on the top 5 list. But very good and unique flavor combinations that you don't normally get. And that's why I did note, I think I've noted on almost all these, I don't like the typical, it's almost like a burger. Oh, you got a cow, they're going to have a cowboy burger in there. It's going to have barbecue sauce and pineapple. It's predictable. These flavors are a little bit more unpredictable. Number 2, Cookie PGH meaning Pittsburgh. They're just the trailer. So far, they don't have a storefront, but they are great. And it's a bigger cookie. And I don't typically like bigger cookies, but there isn't 14 gallons of caramel coming out when you break it open. So that brings us to the number 1 spot. And I want to remind everybody that the number 1 spot has held its spot for at least probably 15 years. From the first time I had it at the original store in New York, where you walk down the stairs, and if someone's coming up with their order, first the line is going downstairs. It's so narrow that you have to people have to turn sideways. I don't even know how fire code, this is not a fire code violation. But anyway, this has been number 1 the entire time. And honestly, there's nothing close to it. To the point where last night I still had a few left in the freezer. I took them out, had them thaw all day. And I really wasn't all that hungry, but the cookie was awesome. So let me point this out. As bodybuilders, when we have a cheat meal, typically we're hungry. That's why an In-N-Out burger tastes so good and you think you've had the best burger in your life because you're hungry. When something is really good, something tastes really good, it's going to taste good even if you're not starving or you're not in the middle of a diet. And I sat down to that cookie last night, okay, 2, and I ate them, and almost every other bite I'm like, man, this is a good cookie. And I just had a different cookie company on my list of trying out. This was number 31 of the last 12 months. It's a good cookie, but it's a typical, and they're very well known. I'm not gonna pass on them, so I'm not gonna bring it up as a pass. I have a different one because it's still a good cookie, and they're in the industry. The owner competes, so it's not a bad cookie, but it's not awesomeness either. So this is number 1. Okay. Levain. It's a New York institution. Anybody in New York, if you say Levain is not the best cookie you had, you just don't want to admit it because you're mad at them for some reason, or maybe you're bored of them because you've eaten them for so long. I don't know. I'm a oatmeal raisin guy. There is not a better oatmeal raisin cookie that I've had ever. And the gap between this cookie and all the other oatmeal raisin cookies isn't even worth discussing. Now, that doesn't mean they only have oatmeal raisin. They have chocolate chip. They have one where they combine. It's almost like it looks like a Rocky Road. It's like a darker chocolate, but then it has white chocolate, chips in it, things like that. They do things with some have walnuts in it. One is coconut chocolate chip. They don't have a huge selection of flavors. They maybe have 6 or 8 flavors. But
I'm literally on their site now. Yeah.
And you can get them in tins. I sent a couple tins to Nick because Nick Walker and I go back and forth about cookies. He told me about Cookie PGH. He knew about Levain because his parents live in Jersey. He's in Jersey now. But I made it a point to send a couple tins, and he hit me up. He's like, my mom wants to know if she can have some. I'm like, that's why I sent 2 tins so that you'd share. But he wanted to keep them all for himself. He's a big cookie guy too. He loves Levain. I don't know if he thinks it's number 1. Maybe he does. Maybe he doesn't. I don't know. But it is far and above my number 1 spot. Nothing touches it. Nothing has replaced it. If you don't like it, here's the thing. I don't want to hear in the comments, oh, you got to have this cookie. Okay. You can tell me if you have had a good cookie and you want me to have it. That's cool. But you have to have tried Levain and had it before you can comment that it's not the best cookie. You got to be fair. You got to try the cookie. And then if you don't like it, you don't think it's the best, that's totally cool. But specifically, if you're an oatmeal raisin guy, get the oatmeal raisin cookie. And I would say this too, because I think this is important. And this is a preference thing. Some people like them heated, like warm. I don't. I like them at room temperature because I like a cookie to crumble a little bit. I don't want it to be just this gooey fall apart type thing or hot. Please don't ever microwave a gourmet cookie. Please don't ruin that cookie by microwaving.
Oven or air fryer?
Oven, or even just sitting out. But if you want it a little bit warm, put it in the oven. What I do is just preheat to 200, and I put it in when I start the preheat so that it, the temperature comes up. If it's frozen, then you got to leave them out to thaw first before you warm them up. It won't work. You'll get a warm cookie on the outside, not necessarily hot, but warm. Then the inside obviously could be cold, or it still could be partially frozen. So leave them sit out. It's not a small cookie like a tiny cookie, but it's also not a massive 14-pounder that you break apart and stuff comes out. It's a cookie. And at the same time, it's really freaking good. And you can order them not only from their website, straight from Levain, but you can also order them from Goldbelly. I brought up Goldbelly before. Goldbelly isn't just cookies. It's literally anything. You can order Cat's pastrami from Cat's Deli in New York City, and they will ship it to you. You can order the best pecan pie you ever had and have it shipped to you on dry ice. They will ship so many things. You got to be patient because sometimes it takes 5-6 days for you to get the order, for them to put together the order. And because they're middlemaning all these, whether it be cookies, donuts, cinnamon rolls, that sort of thing. And I have to figure out my next topic because I just finished the cookie critique.
Yep.
And I think it's going to be cinnamon rolls. I'm not sure. I got to figure out how I'm going to do it because as with the cookies, sometimes there can be local places that you can't get to, you can't order from. And that doesn't help the viewers. If I have a place here that, Maman makes great cookies, but I don't know if you can order them from Maman, New York or not. I'm not sure. And even though it's a great cookie, I don't put it in my top 5, but it is a very good cookie. Oprah agrees as well that it's one of the best chocolate chip cookies she's ever had. Anyway, Levain at the top of the list. Try them out. Check it out. I want to know what you guys think.
And it's spelled Levain for those wondering.
Exactly.
Awesome. So thank you for everybody sent questions. These are all going to be at least 5 to 10 minute answers. So why don't we save them, or maybe we do another listener question episode like we did early on, because we have so many good ones.
I think that's a good idea. We could definitely do that. Yep.
Awesome. So so let's do that, because we'll have at least 4, and I know there's some more new ones. So why don't we do a listener Q&A episode next week?
And we appreciate the good questions. So continue to ask the questions, or even if you have topic ideas, make sure that you post those ideas and questions, because the more we have, the better. I mean, not only are they great questions, but we can then pick from the questions that we have and try to put together, like we're talking about doing the next show is just a Q&A. Yep. On that note, I'm going to take us out, Marv, if you're good with it. We got to get to getting. This is Skip and Dr. Marv Splitting. If you enjoyed the show, be sure to like, subscribe, share, and ring the bell. It should sound a little something like this. You didn't like the show? Pretend you did. Like, subscribe, share, and ring the bell anyway. I'm always careful when I reach for the button to make sure I push the right button, because I don't want Peter Griffin laughing or farting or anything else when I'm trying to do it right. Be sure to use the TrueNutrition.com link in the closing credits to save 10% on not just Team Skip protein, but every supplement they sell. Not only do I use Team Skip protein with my clients, but other top prep guys have their clients use my protein because it's that good. Dr. Marv, how can someone reach out to you if they have questions or if they want to work with you?
So something I forgot to say, we did the Toe Pro for last week's Rodeo Rehab Roundup. I now have a promo code to save you some money. So it's in my Instagram.
Nice.
We didn't have that in time. Of course, my internet's taking forever, so I don't remember it off the top of my head. So you're going to go to Instagram and go to @dr.marvin.saysdc. That's the easiest way to get a hold of me. My office is in the Houston Bay area, theeducatedmeathead.com, consults. I'm now doing one custom workout routines. There is a delay with how much stuff I have going on. Whatever I can do to help, just reach out to me. Let me know.
If you have too much skin, meaning you say you're 15%, but your fat ass is well over 20% body fat, go to teamskip.com and you'll find all my contact information, including Team Skip merch, even in orange. You can also follow me on Instagram at Intense Muscle. I remove skin, aka body fat, not loose skin, not a cosmetic surgeon, that type of thing. I just want to be clear. Yep. Keep in mind that this is a team of 3, not 2. Chris is the enigma behind the scenes, and he's responsible for visuals and graphics, and he also plays a massive role in the creative process. This project would not work without him. So from all 3 of us, it's been a business doing pleasure with you. Join us again next week for another episode of Between Two Dumbbells.